we did last time we met in a different world.
Before October 7th.
Yeah, we discussed the last chapter of Masechet Brachot and the issue of Tfilat Shav and the Babli and Yerushalmi. And there was a very Leibnizic discussion here about this sugya. I wanna, meanwhile, staying with the Mishnah and deal with the structure of the five first prakim, and then enter into a more serious look at Kriyat Shema in the Siddur as well, because the relationship between the Siddur, etc. Now, if you look at the first five prakim, the first three prakim deal with Kriyat Shema, right? And chapter 4 and 5 deal with Shmoneh Esrei, with Tfilah. Right. I just want to say one thing, structurally, just from seeing the halacha as it's being formulated, you understand that Kriyat Shema and Tfilah are very separate institutions. They have separate times. They're not in the same time, right? That's the don't overlap in time at all. And mainly also they don't allow overlap in the group of people who are mechuyav in this chiyuv, right? That's the Mishnah that says, Nashim v'avadim, the Mishnah in chapter 3, chapter Gimel, Nashim v'avadim ktanim pturim min kriyat shema u'mitfilin, v'chayavim betfilah u'bemzuzah u'birkat hamazon. Then you understand that Kriyat Shema and Tfilah are not the same institutions at all. By the way, the fact that they're part of the Siddur, it's very misleading. It's a result of the halacha of Smichat Geula L'Tfilah, which puts Kriyat Shema and Birchotea next to Shmoneh Esrei. But it's not the same institution. Also we see, I want to say something structural about those institutions. Kriyat Shema is far more restrictive in terms of the membership who's entitled to perform it, right? So Nashim v'avadim u'ktanim pturim mikriyat Shema. Chatan patur mikriyat Shema, though he's chayav betfilah, right? That's also the halacha. Chatan patur mitfilah. Nosei amita, etc., pturim mikriyat Shema. So if you look at the people who are mechuyev, Kriyat Shema is far more limited. But, on the other hand, in terms of the performance itself, Tfilah is far more restrictive. Right? Let's look at different halachot in the Mishnah, which calls for attention.
Rosh Ilan.
Exactly, the Rosh Ilan. Where
it's
is that?
also more flexible. because you have tefillah tzara.
What?
It's also more flexible, the different forms of tefillah.
Yes, we're going to get to that as well.
There's nothing more קצר than
Yes, פרק ב' משנה ד', that's a very interesting thing. האומנים, האומנים קוראים בראש האילן או בראש הנטבח, מה שאינם רשאים לעשות כן בתפילה. Right? So look at the difference between נשים ועבדים וקטנים, between פרק ב' משנה ד' and פרק ג' משנה ג'. Right? You see, on the one hand, and also look at the difference in way in which kavanah is formulated in Kriyat Shema and formulated in Tfilah, right? First halacha of Mishnah, of פרק ב' משנה, פרק א' משנה ב', היה קורא בתורה והגיע הזמן למקרא, אם כיוון ליבו יצא ואם לאו לא יצא, בפרקים שואל מפני הכבוד ומשיב, ובאמצע שואל מפני היראה ומשיב, דברי רב מאיר, רב יהודה אומר באמצע שואל מפני היראה ומשיב מפני הכבוד, בפרקים שואל מפני הכבוד ומשיב מפני הכבוד. We're going to study all this much more carefully. But then you see the definition of kavanah in Tfilah. Where is it in our Mishnahs? Where is the definition of kavanah in Tfilah? Far more demanding than this halacha. פרק ה' משנה א', אין עומדים להתפלל על מתוך כל וראש, חסידים הראשונים היו שומעים שעה אחת ומתפללים כדבר שחרר, אפילו המלך שואל בשלומו לא ישיבנו, אפילו נחש כורך על עקבו לא יפסיק, very different than the halacha of Krishna, right? So what we see,
also needs kavana.
what?
Krishna also needs kavana.
It needs, but of a different level of כוונה. היה קורא בתורה, והגיע הזמן למקרא, אם כיוון ליבו יצא, right? We'll have to figure out what is the nature of this כוונה when we'll get in deeper in it, but it's very different, and then שואל, משיב, etc., באמצע, but then אפילו המלך שואל בקבל, okay. So we see, I mean structurally, we see a very interesting phenomenon in the Mishnah, which is that on the terms of membership, in terms of the group limits, etc., Kriyat Shema is far more limited and demanding. In terms of performance, right? By the way, I just want to say, even the choreography of Krishna is far more lax, right? B'shchiva, b'yeshiva, etc., at least according to Beis Hillel, right? Tefillah, עומדים להתפלל, etc. So the choreography, the concentration needed, the kavanah, is far more restrictive and demanding in tefillah. I mean, I'm just saying why I would call first impression of two very different institutions.
I want to just, if you could a little bit more explain, why do you say, I know why you say it, but if you could a little bit more elaborate what it means, institutions, when you call institutions. Why don't you say, Tu Menachem, Tefillah, Krishna, why do you call it institutions? What do you mean when you say institutions?
I mean, by institutions, I mean structured liturgical activity. Now I'm using a term that is even more problematic than institution. I mean, you have, what is halacha? It's structuring, right? You structure time.
אני שואל, למה אתה, אצל החוקרים, אצל הפרופסורים, חוקרים, אוהבים לקרוא מוסד התפילה, מוסד הזה, למה?
By מוסד we mean, by מוסד we mean something that is not a merely voluntary activity, but it's a rule-bounded activity in time, in place, in version, etc. It's not chiyuv, right? Mezuzah is a chiyuv, but it's not a mosad. Okay.
Why isn't the mosad?
Okay, I don't want to get.
I'm curious.
No, I'm telling you, by mosad
performance.
By
I'm saying there's also performance in mezuzah. Why isn't mosad?
You have to be very busy with it.
Because what you're talking about is.
I understand what you're saying.
Okay, this is a grammar question.
Okay, yeah. What I'm talking about, what is the Mishnah doing, right? The Mishnah creates halacha. In this case, it creates a rule-bounded activity, which what I want to say of two different, call it Mossad, rule-bounded activity that we see is sharply different. Not only that, we can see the contours of its differences. Not only that, the Mishnah is carefully to tell us, to juxtapose the difference, right? It's not a mikre, right? When the Mishnah says to us, right? האומנים קוראים בראש האילן ובראש הנטבח מה שאין כן בתפילה. Why?
Because you need more kavana.
Or you might say you need more kavana, and when you are in Rosh HaNidbach, etc., you don't need kavana. Or another thing, it's tefillah as a mode of standing needs far more care. עומד לפני המלך. You don't do it בראש הנטבח. It's a question whether it's all real.
Is the choreography or is the conceptual or it's the kavanah?
Okay.
Goes together, would be the same thing.
It's different. It's a different strand of law.
Why do you say? I'm just asking. Why do you say?
Is it part of the standing, the seriousness of standing? It's purely bringing. So if you are a Rashuel and you have a good hanger, you're stable, then you could read. No.
My tendency, but that we're going to have to get. Look, I began with saying Kriyat Shema and Tefillah are two very different things, okay? It has different times, etc. And then I'm looking at two Mishnayot that are explicitly telling us that there are two different things. Perek Bet Mishnah Dalet and Perek Gimel Mishnah Gimel. Okay? And they tell us in some ways the whole story. They say to us, האומנים קוראים בראש האילן ובראש הנטבח מה שאין רשאים לעשות כן בתפילה. One. And then ג' נשים ועבדים וקטנים פטורים מקריאת שמע ובתפילין, וחיילים חייבים בתפילה ובמזוזה ובברכת המזון. Right? So that tells us the following. My definition is vis-a-vis membership. Those who participate, קריאת שמע is more restrictive and demanding. Vis-a-vis mode of standing, tefillah is far more demanding, restrictive. And then I said, if you look, when the Mishnah actually doesn't make the direct juxtaposition of opposite, you see when it formulates the halacha of kavanah in Perek Bet, Mishnah Aleph, in Kriyat Shema, and when it formulates the kavanah in tefillah in Perek Hey, Mishnah Aleph, you see a completely different formulation that is a mirror image, especially in אפילו המלך שואל בשלמה לא יפסיק, אפילו נחש כרוך על עקבו לא יפסיק, which is against the, בין הפרקים, בתוך הפרקים, משיב, מפני הכבוד, מפני היראה, that you can stop in the middle. Okay. Now, there was in our reading a certain debate about how to understand Mishnah Dalet that the Omanim קוראים. One will say, well, it's really about kavanah. So you standing בראש האילן או בראש המטבח, it bothers your concentration. One other form is to say it's not about kavanah, right? It's not about kavanah. It's about a mode of a mode.
Like standing for.
Yeah. You don't do that. You don't speak from Rosh Hailan, right? You stand, etc. It's, I said, Omed Bifnei HaMelech. It has nothing to do with your capacity for mental concentration, right? It's very interesting.
But the question on this way is, if there's any other din in the Mishnah that you could prove is of this kind of thing, that it's not the way that you stand in front of the king, because if you don't have, maybe you can't create such a kind, even though we know it's standing
maybe it is kavuna.
Okay, we're going to get to that when we'll study. Okay. So now the question is, so what is the difference? What drives that difference? Right? So what is Kriyat Shema, by the way? What is Kriyat Shema? As a performance, what is Kriyat Shema? Kabbalat Ol Malchut Shamayim, right? The Mishnah says in
Shahada.
Trite.
No, it's not Shahada.
Package.
No, it's not. I'll explain why. What is... No, Shahada is a declaration. I don't think... Soon I'm going to get to that. Okay? So you said it's Kabbalat Malchut Shamayim, right?
That's the first.
All Malchut Shamayim.
זה פרשה ראשונה.
פרשה ראשונה ופרשה שנייה זה...
קבולת מצווה.
Right? That's the Mishnah says explicitly in פרק ב' משנה ב', right? למה קדמה שמה לוויה ישמוע, אלא כדי שיקבל עליו מלכות שמיים תחילה, ואחר כך יקבל עליו עול מצוות. What is Kabbalah, by the way, in Mishnah terminology?
Undertaking.
Yeah. המקבל על עצמו להיות חבר, it means an act of committing yourself.
To be committed.
Right? It's act of committing yourself. Right? Actually, that's the technical term in the Mishnah. It's accepting a commitment. Right? Like, so you committing yourself. By the way, where it is actually performed in Kriyat Shema, where's the act of commitment itself?
Shema.
No. Well, Shema. Emet v'yatziv, right? This is why there are some shitot that says that's Tzliat Torah. Amen, ve'amen, 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 aleinu. That's where the actual event happens in some ways, right?
It's not only we say we are obligated, now we're doing it.
This is the difference between declaration of faith. God is one. It's edut.
Shahada.
This is not shahada.
Not Edis.
It's not edus. It's not you bear a witness to a truth. You declare it. No, it's an act. It's a legal act of commitment. המקבל על עצמו, etc., etc.
That's the translation of Shema.
It's very nice now, the
translation of Shema is not
Gaon says that every word in Emes Yatzif, all those things, Emes is against the first pasuk, second pasuk, you'll see, it goes exactly the Minyan Psukim.
Right.
It's like a firming
It's a firm, yeah.
but the firming
The word Shema is not here. I see all the...
Right.
Is Tavim ba'atzmecha.
Right. Shema v'tavin, yeah, right.
It's like understand that this is...
Right. So we have a definition of the what is performed in Kriyat Shema, right? It's an act of, and right, the original nusach of Kriyat Shema had 10 הדיברות in it, right? That was the original nusach. Then Mitna Minim it was this. So we can say that Kriyat Shema is re-entry
Commitment.
in covenant, right? It's commitment. It's like reenacting Matan Torah.
Like Ezra and Nehemiah did.
But that's a problem, because then why Nashim are not there?
Okay, because Nashim don't constitute the covenantal community.
Matan Torah and all the bris, but always Nashim were there.
Okay.
It's a continuation of a bris, you're saying?
It's reenactment. It's not continuation.
Yeah, but that's a problem.
It's a daily reenactment of Matan Torah.
So why the Nashim
Of Kabbalat Torah. Because Nashim are not fully members
every
of the
bris you
covenantal
see
community.
Nashim. Tell me a bris you don't see Nashim. Every bris you see Nashim. Except the
There's
bris
the technical
Milah.
reason
No.
of Mitzat Sesh Hazman Gama. I mean, that's the easy one.
No, but we're talking now. We're not going down the Gemaras, but we're trying to.
Women
he
were
said
never
specific-
part of
you were
it.
saying there's a
They're
specific
not
reason
part of
here?
it ever.
He said that it's a bris. It's very hard for me to understand it's a bris if the Nushma is excluded. If by all bris we see in the Torah, you always see the Nashim. Always, yeah, it's like.
The verse of the before the Krishma, we say that we're going to do now the bris.
Right, but I don't understand why. If it's called a covenant, that's
Okay, it's a good question. I would say it defines a full membership in the covenantal community.
right. But I don't think it's like a new. It's like being mechadesh. It's like being masher every day. Because if saying mechadesh, then it'll be a little bit a problem. Okay. Saying the language needs to be a little bit changed.
We should also be they have a special.
Now, so it doesn't involve. It doesn't involve. Right. So we are making headways. Right. אנחנו מתקדמים.
כן, כן.
נכון? Unlike our prior first hour, now we actually have a genuine התקדמות. Right. We saw structural differences in the Mishnah between Krishma and Tfilah. We saw that our editor actually wants us to understand those differences, right? In Bet Mishnah Gimel and Gimel Mishnah Dalet, right? Directly in the difference between Bet Mishnah Aleph and Perek Hey Mishnah Aleph, right? He wants us to carry that. And now we're trying to figure out what is Kriyat Shema. And my version of it, just in terms of analysis of the Mishnaic use of the term lekabel, mekabel, is it's a juridical act of accepting upon yourself, right? מקבל על עצמו להיות חבר, in Dumai, in other places, etc., etc.
So you're saying without saying v'yatzav, it's not, you didn't do it?
I said על הדרך, I don't think על הדרוש, but actually when I asked myself...
Or you could say just v'yatzav and be mekayim the mitzvah.
Well, but then it's not...
On what? Okay, on what?
You have to refer to something.
Okay, so you have to point with your finger.
The amen, I mean, you can...
Yeah, I heard what you said.
Now, I'm just saying, I'm saying the following, that it's not an act of addressing Hashem directly in a second person, עומד לפני המלך. It's not, it doesn't have אתה, if we want to define it.
It's not addressed. It's not addressed to God.
And therefore
it doesn't need those.
Therefore, you can do it on the ilan, on the nidbach, in a
Address
different.
to yourself?
Yeah. Right.
Shemai is Tuvim ba'atzma.
Right.
Uh-huh.
That's the basic differentiation. The underlying basic differentiation of very two different modes.
If the reason is Ma'amad, not Kavanah. Kavanah is more simple. In other words,
look, but
the choreography is.
The choreography is very different, right?
Yeah, but if the Talmud, Paribais Mishna Dalat, is because of choreography, we might think it's just Kavanah. It's much easier.
Yeah, I don't think it's Kavanah. I say it from experience. But even if you push to Kavanah, I'm fine with
simple.
it. Do you think המלך שואל בשלמה לא יפסיק? אפילו המלך שואל בשלמה לא יפסיק. Yeah, which is very different than קריאת שמע. If המלך שואל בשמך in the middle of קריאת שמע, you better say shalom, right? You think it's a din in Kavanah?
No, it's contradiction. If you don't have respect for king, what kind of king is God? You know?
No, because here you stand before Hashem. Okay. Right? It's a standing before Hashem. So, and by the way, for example, I'll give you an example, right? You can say Kriyat Shema, standing, lying down, right?
It's mechir.
Right. That's פרק א' משנה ג', we're going to deal with it as we do it. כל אדם קורא כדרכו, where he is, right?
But if you're reenacting a covenant, then I would assume there's a protocol for that.
No.
There is a certain way how you do a covenant.
You
see that in the Torah all the time.
The protocol is mekabel, and given the fact that it doesn't address in a second person standing before Hashem. By the way, you could have said, let's do it even if it's a covenant, right? And there is a beautiful midrash that says, we're going to talk about it, that says, look, the difference between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the emperor. The emperor, when he brings a prostagma that is red, everybody stands beretet uvizia, etc. Here, היה עומד בראש האילן, היה זה. But we could have done it differently, but it still, what I'm saying, has an explanatory power. Why the difference here so deep? Okay, so now we understand that these are two very different acts. One is a juridical act of accepting, and the other one is addressing, direct addressing for shevach, for bakasha, for odaya. And at the core of it is the second person address of ata. And what I would like to do in the time we left is to look at the Siddur and how the theme of Kabbalat Malchut Shamayim is organized in the Siddur itself. Okay? Now, the Mishnah says, right, we all know it, we all say it many times, right? There is שתי ברכות לפניה ושניים לאחריה in the morning and in the there is שניים לפניה ואחת לאחריה in the morning and שניים לפניה ושניים לאחריה in the evening, and there is a debate about the ברכות of the evening, right? We have that Mishnah that we're going to study carefully later about the structure of Mishnah Daled, right? בשחר, פרק א' משנה ד', בשחר מברך שתיים לפניה ואחרת לאחריה, ובערב שתיים לפניה ושתיים לאחריה, etc. So we have a structure of how Kriyat Shema is organized, right? And now we're going to look at שחרית, right? Now, 2 לפניה שחרית is what? יוצר המאורות, that starts with ברוך אתה השם אלוקינו מלך העולם יוצר אור ובחושך, and ends with ברוך אתה השם יוצר המאורות, right? Then the second bracha is what? אהבת עולם. It doesn't start with Baruch. Why? Because it's Mocha lechaverta. It rests on the first Baruch, right? It leans on the first Baruch. Now, Ahavat Olam has 2 versions, right? Ahavat Olam, Ahava Rabba, right? It's not like that originally it was a version for Ma'ariv and a version for Shachris, right? There were 2 versions
on weekdays.
And there were 2 versions, but by law of preservation of versions, one was given to Shachris and one was given to Arvit, right?
Arvit is much shorter.
Yeah.
Oh, they are 2.
There are 2 versions. It was 2 versions of Arvit and Shacharit. It's like Dushat Hayom in Shabbat, right? You have, we say Mincha 1 version, in Ma'ariv 1 version, Shachris. It's not like there was a designated version for. But the Siddur keeps different versions to different days. Okay? אבל זה לא חשוב, it's just הערה. So, what I want to look at is the thematic of organization of קבלת מלכות שמיים through קריאת שמע וברכותיה. So the first bracha deals with what? It has a theme. Right? It's the cosmic
planets, the cosmos.
The cosmic, יוצר המאורות, בטובו מחדש, וכו' וכו' וכו'. By the way, in the first bracha, there is an act of קבלת מלכות שמיים, where it is performed. Exactly, right?
We're just saying what the Malachim are doing.
Exactly.
It's not talking about
we
us.
are reporting.
We're jealous on them or something. We're jealous on the beautiful.
We are reporting an act of קבלת מלכות שמיים, right? Where is that? It says. It starts with כולם אהובים, כולם רואים, כולם רואים, כולם רוצים ורצון כולם, כולם פתוחים וכלים בשעה ובשעה, ומעריצים ומקדישים וממליכים. Right? There is an המלכה, right? And this is how do they do המלכה? Through a structure of aniyah, right? Onim. What is the aniyah? There are two. There is a chorus here. One group says what? Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh. Hashem tzvaot melo kol haaretz kvodo. והאופנים וחיות הקודש והיו מנסים לעומת צופים לעומתם משבחים ואומרים לעומתם עונים. אגב, עונים means the term aniyah means one says one and the other one says one, right? And the other one says Baruch Kvod Hashem Mimkomo, right? So we have an amlacha in a structure of aniyah. That's very important. Then we have the second amlacha that we do in a structure of aniyah, which is what? Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, and the aniyah is what? Baruch Shem Kvod Malchuto L'Olam Va'ed. I think that's the way it was said originally. I mean, we're going to study Onim, Porsim, etc. And then there is
how did it work? Who said
what?
Here we ask Malachim instead of them.
Tzibur said Shema, and
the Kahal said Baruch Hashem, and the Kahal did not say Shema?
Maybe not, I'm not sure. Maybe.
You mean the original by Yaakov Avinu?
No, I'm talking how it was done in the Then there is a third amlacha, right? There is a third amlacha. Where is it? In the last bracha, right? Where is the third amlacha in the last bracha? תהילות לאל יום גם ענו שירה וסורה ובאה יחד כולם הודו והמליכו. So there is an amlacha. Now what is the aniyah there? There is a structure of aniyah. There is מי כמוך באלים השם, מי כמוך נהדר בקודש, נורא תהילות אוסף אלה, and then there is an answer, השם ימלוך לעולם ועד. So, actually, if we look structurally, now the theme here is not cosmic, not creation, it's what? יציאת מצרים and redemption, גאל ישראל.
God in the history.
Like Rashi says, means like
Right. So we have different themes of aniyot. By the way, just I want to say, if you look at the aniyah, Baruch Shem Kvod Malchuto Leolam Vaed, is a composite of the two other aniyot, right? Baruch Kvod Hashem Imkomo, VeHashem Yimloch Leolam Vaed, right?
You say it says in advance.
No, I'm saying just
What did you say? The what?
the aniyah of the malachim. Look,
okay. Because it says in advance.
Okay, let me say it. I'm just saying, meanwhile, simple things that we don't notice because we have said it so many times, we have never actually read it. Okay? I'm saying the following.
It covers the Shamim.
Okay, I want to say, if you look carefully in Kriyat Shema Birchotea, there are 3 hamlachot performed by 3 different groups in 3 different contexts. The first hamlacha is performed by whom? Malachim. And the context is the whole cosmos. Yetzer HaMeorot, Chadesh Bechul Torah, Chol Yom Tamid, etc., etc. And it's performed in the structure of aniyah. One says Kadosh, 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 and the other says...
And it talks about space, no mention of time, no usid, but so both are about space.
Yeah, exactly. You can say space, I mean, Or Chadash al Tzion Ta'ir Nizkeh Kulanu B'meira L'Oro, that's the impatience of the... You want to insert it, but by the way...
It's the opposite of Malach L'Or, it's Kavoida.
It's not, and we know in Sidur Asag, etc., some people drop this. It's
the opposite of Malach L'Or,
even are impatient, you know, they're now that we're talking, Or Chadash al Tzion Ta'ir, but it's not part of the theme, right? It enters...
It would be the opposite of Malach L'Or, it's Kavoida. We don't want Malach L'Or, it's Kavoida, we want him here in Sion.
Exactly. Or Chadash, don't forget, by the way, now that we're talking about cosmos, we have some issues.
Now, Or Chadash, the only are.
Right. But in any event, so we have the following. We have 3 amlachot in this structure, right? Performed by 3 different groups. We start with the first group in 3 different contexts. We have the amlacha of the malochim. By the way, all are structurally performed by the structure of aniyah. One group says this, the other group answers, onim, right? One performed by the malachim in the context of creation and the cosmos of the whole. The other one in the extreme, at the end, is performed by whom? By Yotzei Mitzrayim, right? In the context of Geula. And their aniyah is Mi kamocha, Ba'elim Hashem, Mi kamocha nevati lo tosef feleh. And then the answer, right? Hashem Yimloch L'Olam Va'ed. And the context is Geula in history. And then in the middle, we have the performance of Amlacha that is performed by the Kahal, who's actually enacting Kriyat Shema, which the context is not the world as a whole, not the cosmos, not the Geula, but Matan Torah, right?
Why?
Because you say, and it led to by Ahavat Olam, right?
Continues.
אהבת עולם, והוא שלך, ותלמדי חוקי חיים, לעשות רצונך בלבב שלם, right? etc., etc. And then ליחדך באהבה ולאהבה את שמך, שם נוסחאות אבן סז להמליכך, ברוך אתה השם אורכם עמו ישראל באהבה. And then they are the context, the original version of Krishma. You read עשרת הדיברות, you say Kriyat Shema and Amen v'Amen v'Amen, right?
It's a very nice explanation, but you said, but how it goes with Aniyah, but I'm just adding a footnote that Chazal do tell us that Halal went with Aniyah, They never tell us that Krishna went with this kind of tzira. It's interesting.
No, there is a Tosefta, Porsim al Shma Onim.
Shatter person, okay.
But we're gonna get there. I'm just saying, it's actually conceptually very interesting organization.
Does Hashem Elokechem Emes also count as a Aniyah?
I don't think so. But there are two modes. There is in the Mechilta debate how Az Yashir was said. There are two modes of saying, like Hoidu Lashem Kitov, right? So you say
Piska and then you answer.
you have to Piska and then he says etc. and then you repeat Hoidu Lashem Kitov. I mean, I'm going to get to structures of Aniyah. But I wanna concentrate on what we're doing here. So there are 3 amlachot in 3 very different contexts, performed by 3 different subjects. One is the Melachim and its relationship to the larger creation. One is the Yotzei Mitzrayim in relationship to Geula, God as the kind of the king, God's kingdom, God's amloche through history, manifested through salvation, through history. The other one is God's amloche manifested in the cosmos, and at the center is God amloche manifested through Kabbalat Torah in the here and now. I want to say one very interesting thing. If you look very carefully in terms of the liturgical organization of this unit, it's also done in a different mood. How is the first Amlacha being done? In what mood? It actually states. No, the first one. Onim be'ema v'omrim be'ira. Right? Onim be'ema v'omrim be'ira. Because this is the cosmic, impersonal, powerful awe. Exactly. The awe of the cosmos. Onim be'ema v'omrim be'ira.
Also, Kadosh means mufrash, muvdal.
Exactly. Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh. Melo kol haaretz. Right? And then you don't know. Onim v'omrim be'ira. Now, the Yotzei Mitzrayim in what is the mood? What is the disposition? The simcha, right? Simcha. The simcha. They were joyfully redeemed. And the middle, our Kabbalah is in what? Okay. What is be'ava? Be'ava is unconditional acceptance. Exactly. Right. So you see how Kriyat Shema, I would say the following. The Mesader of the Sidur, which were Chazal, right?
Who is it?
Okay, whenever you locate it, Chazal in general, that had this idea of creating or reflecting, or whether they innovated it or not, it's not important. They established the moment of Kabbalat Malchut Shamayim as a daily act of Kabbalah. They framed it within the larger context of 2 other Kabbalot, 2 other Malchut Shamayim, building both a contrast and an envelope to this activity. One is the Malachim in the cosmos who do Amlacha B'ir'ah, right? Then there is.
What are we trying to say that the Malachim do it?
So
like we want to do it?
Oh, okay. First of all, they're saying theologically. Theologically, I would say, or religiously. First of all, this is something we do, we read. I'm not sure you ever know this. We're reading Kriyat Shema Birchotea, that there are 3 amlachot here, that they're done in Aniyah, that they done one in the.
I think we should daven again today.
But that's shachis.
It's fine. There will be a next shachis.
Ma'ariv, you also have a similar pattern.
What?
The Ma'ariv.
Ma'ariv is very complicated
because you use the first one.
Additions.
By the way,
and the second.
If Kriyat Shema is Kabbalat Malchut Shamayim and an act of Knisa V'Brit, a daily reenactment of Matan Torah, Kriyat Shema in Arvit is actually a big problem. Okay? What is Kriyat Shema of Arvit?
Why are these brachot? Why isn't it Ikar Krishma, all these three? Why is the main focus the middle one?
Okay, what is it that they're trying to say? It's very interesting, right? What is it they're trying to do? They're trying to say, look, we are engaging now in what we engage, right? In the performance, right? You would say what philosophers like to talk about speech act. Right? It's an action by speech, right? Like Are at Mekudeshet li. It's an action.
Please elaborate more on this. What does it mean, action speech?
Speech act means that there is a book by John Austin, How to Do Things with Words. Right? It was a very important book in philosophy, where he says words are not only descriptive. They don't not only describe things, they perform things.
They have a chalois?
It's not only the
Don't go there.
That's
I want to go on the ontological thing.
No.
Could you please explain a little bit more this concept? You said it's a well-known philosophy, but could you a little bit more elaborate what it means? It's an important thing.
There was a philosopher,
we're the people of the words.
a very wonderful philosopher by the name of J.L. Austin, John Austin.
When was he?
He passed away in 1960 or so, and he wrote a very influential small book called How to Do Things with Words. And he said something that after you read it, you say, sure, of course, which is a good sign of the book. Right?
Mm-hmm.
But of course, but I never thought about it before. He says, look, the function of words is not only to describe. We perform things by words. Right? Yeah, he wouldn't say that. No, he says, yes, he says, I name this, he uses the Areat Mekudeshet li, right? Neder Shvua. Now, when we say about proposition to describe things, it's either false or true. But Areat Mekudeshet li, it's neither false nor true. Either it's successful or you misfired. Mm-hmm. Right? He makes a distinction, etc. I once was teaching Masech Nedarim, and I say let's do a study of performatives, right? Because a neder is a performance through words, right? You create a chiyuv, etc. How did I get to that? Because I said, okay, we are. What is the Siddur? What is Chazal doing here? It's very fascinating. We are, Krishma is a performance with words. It's Kabbalah. It's a judicial act. I said, as this is why I say, the ultimate moment of Krishna is emet, v'yatziv, v'nachon, aleinu, etc.
Or v'minikol zuz.
We're accepting
Same
the
thing,
jurisdiction.
no?
Accepting God's malchut.
And at night is v'minikol zuz?
Yeah, it's not, in that respect, it's not a declaration of faith. It's not a shahada. Ijma, it's not Ijma. Okay, whatever.
And at night it's v'minikol zuz, the word v'minikol zuz?
Okay.
I don't know why you're saying so strongly it's not shahada. It means edut.
No, edut is a different performance. Kabbalah is Kabbalah. They're all, אני מעיד שהקדוש ברוך הוא אחד. It's not a declaration of faith.
The difference between...
Yeah, but what means ma'id? What means someone is ma'id?
Ma'id is always to outside of you. You're giving ideas. Well, here
when you say ma'id, doesn't mean you testify that God is God. That means that you accept God.
No.
Ma'id is to someone else versus mekabel on yourself. With the recipient.
Stronger term.
You can be ma'id.
By the way, isn't the point who is the recipient? When you're mekabel, you're mekabel. When you're ma'id, you're talking to the world.
Exactly. This is why, for example, Kiddush Hashem or Kiddush Hashem needs 10 or Bifnei Asara Israel, etc. The what? Etc. So I just want to say, by the way, apropos Davar Shebekdusha, there is shita in the Rishonim that Kadosh, 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 the Yotzero, you don't say alone. Say what? Because only a minion can carry the transcendence, right? The sense of the transcendence.
Why? But you said tefillah is like for the king. And here's like a personal word undertaking. Why do we need...
No, I'm talking about the Yotzer
Kudosh.
Kadosh, Kadosh. There are those who say that the first...
just these words.
Yeah, the first bracha, you can do the...
Well, we're not doing like sanctification. We're just saying what the malachim are doing.
What are we saying when we're saying, oh, what the malachim do?
Okay. What I'm saying is the following. We're saying there are different dimensions of God Malchut, of Hashem's Malchut in our reality. One has to do with the cosmic dimension, in which what we do, we are echoing a greater amlacha that we are participating as part of, as participating in a greater action.
Amlacha is an outside fact, outside the
right. It's done by the Malachim and we participate.
Not like the Hasidic and even Lithuanian understanding that we are even bigger than the Malachim and we even create the world.
No,
it's like
no, we are bigger. Soon we'll see.
We're saying we're echoing the Amlacha.
We're echoing the Amlacha because it's a cosmic Amlacha. By the whole,
they recognize the cosmos more than
the cosmos is.
We're echoing the Mamlacha.
We make the cosmos. That's what I'm asking.
We're echoing the Mamlacha that we say.
Now there is what we are performing.
We're echoing the Mamlacha that we do.
We're not performing the cosmos. We're performing this.
Which is dependent upon us. Which
we're doing
is
the real declaration.
the Kabbalah of, and this has to do Be'ava. By the way,
they are doing it theoretically.
This has to do with Be'ava because also it reflects Ahavat Hashem to us. Because what is Ahavat Hashem is the giving of Torah. The ultimate form of the love of Hashem to us is that He gave us Ahavat Olam. I like the Arvit version much better. But that has to do with my sensibility to words, right? אהבת עולם בנצחה, אהבת תורה ומצוות חוקים משפטים אותנו למטה, על כן השם אלוקינו שפוט ונסיע בצורה ותורתו ותהיה חיים ורחם ואהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעלמים. God's love to us is the giving of Torah.
How does it show the love?
What?
We're not talking about limut Torah. We're talking about
the giving of Torah.
Why does giving show the love?
We're going to talk about that as well. And our love is unconditional acceptance and engagement with this, right? And that's what we. And then there is the love, the amloche that has to do with history, right? The Gula, which we recognize it as a mode of Malchus Hashem, but sometimes we don't live in that mode. We are not in a moment of Geula. It's a mode that recited by others, and then we hope for and we mention. So there are three modes of Malchut Shamayim: the cosmic, Torah, and history. And the Torah is performed now by us as a judicial act of performance, and the whole Kriyat Shema U'Brichotea envelopes this performance in very. I just want to say something. I just want to say one very interesting thing. If you look carefully at Keter, Keser Yisnu Lecha, is actually a shortened version of Kriyat Shema and Birchotea, right? Because it has three amlachot.
Malachim amrin emalu.
Right.
Amcha Yisrael kibitz amato. Yachad kinamod divrei chemud Yashem yenechot. No.
Shema Yisrael.
Shema Yisrael, and then the end is
Hashem Olam Va'ed, which
refers to. So Keter is a condensed That's something Heinemann actually made a point. What?
They couldn't say Krishna.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Yes.
It's a nice Misoida.
No, it's fine.
No, maybe it is,
but
maybe
it's the
not.
same structure. It is. It
Musa
is.
Simulazione is like Or Chudash Tzion tour, same idea.
Ask Israel after, you go also after Matan Torah. Before,
Well, it's not the chronology, right? Because it's Gal
I
Israel
think it's
also
important.
is a future oriented, right? So so you would say it's the Malchut Shamayim can come with Geula. Malchut Shamayim is in the cosmos, etc. And then there is Malchut Shamayim that we are Mekabel. As I said, Bir'ah, I mean the religious experience, the range of the religious experience is Ir'ah, Ahava, and Simcha. Right? So it's beautifully structured here in the way in which you can see. What I want to tell you is the following. Since the Mishna, the Halacha and the Mishna, and Nosach, Krichme, originate in the same world, you can see how the Nosach of Krishma and Bichotea is a guide to the event, the central event of Kabbalat Malchut Shamayim. Through this creating a plethora, creating a world of Malchut Shamayim in different modes, right? And that's what I'm. So we study here. I mean, we can do maybe a whole shiur on the Siddur, but this is. No, it's. I'm saying what we are really. I'm trying to touch the basics, right? And all wisdom are basically is in the basics. When the basics are interesting, if they're not, then you better not deal with them. So that's the structure. Okay, what we want to do.
I want to first go the next step. If anyone has any questions.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I think I've done my. I mean, at least. Unlike in geopolitics, where you don't know if you make any advancement.
You want to go for questions?
Yeah, we can have some questions.
Okay. Mariv, how it was?
Okay, Mariv, by the way, just notice something very interesting in Mariv. Very interesting. First of all, in the first bracha, right? What isn't there? Right?
In Mariv?
In Mariv, the first bracha. You don't have the Amlacha of Maluchim. It's night. You don't have
We're sleeping.
Okay, then you
we
say.
deal with the cosmos regardless.
They don't mamlich in the night. Yeah, when night, when Or emerges, right? Beron Yachad Kochvei Shachar, right? When light emerges, right? The night is and it lacks that sense of amlacha. By the way, but then you say, but there is the third amlacha, right? The Golda. Mi chamocha ba'elim is in Ma'ariv. But I just want to say to you, right? So you have, and you can see a debate in the Mishna. Okay, if we are in Ma'ariv, let's do some Ma'ariv.
From night day.
Okay. There is a debate in the Mishnah, right? In Mishnah, hey, the last Mishnah, we mention it every time, right? מזכירים יציאת מצרים בלילות. פרק א', משנה ה'. מזכירים יציאת מצרים בלילות. אמר רבי אלעזר בן עזריה, well, we have said it so many times in our lives, right? הרי אני כבן שנה עם שנה ולא זכיתי שתאמר את צלם העירות, עד שדרשה בן זונה ואמר, etc. So what is Maskirim Yetziat? What does it refer to, Maskirim Yetziat Mitzrayim? It's by the way debated among the interpreters, right?
We say the third pash also.
No, it's not Vayomer, I think. The Pshat. The Cohen and Reb Shaul Lieberman, the two big Geonim, if they come together.
The Cohen of Shaul.
No, the Vilner Cohen
and
Reb Shaul.
It's the same.
Both. I know once the Chazon Ish wrote to Reb Shaul. He says, "Where is כאשר עשה ולא כאשר זמן, כאשר זמן ולא כאשר עשה written." I think it was about that, and Reb Shaul said, I can find it, and the Chazon Ish said, I cannot find it, so they say, so if we both cannot find it, it must not be written.
It cannot be written. Where is it written?
Yeah, what's the source? I mean,
what's the source?
Yeah, in any event. So, מזכירים יציאת מצרים בלילות is the third bracha. The bracha שאחריה. Yeah, that's the Goen says, and that's right. What? It's Gaal Israel. Whether you say Gaal Israel or not. Now you see the logic of it.
And not the Pasha from Tzitzit?
No, Parasha from Tzitzit is not Maskirim Yetziat Mitzrayim. No, they're right.
The course of it.
So you're saying in Moshe Mashiach, so the machlokes between the Ben Zoma and Chachamim is really what's the main purpose of the last bracha?
So if there was a tradition not saying Bracha Shlishit Gaal Israel, you understand it, right?
Because the first part is also
the first part, the first part, and then you ask yourself, so what is Krishma of Shachar of Ma'ariv? It's an interesting.
What is it?
Okay, Krishma Lamita.
That's something else. Krishma Lamita.
No.
Oh, you mean Krishma Lamita?
I don't understand. Where is the
Now the devil.
Was it
that's why we're saying it.
No.
So what is the Krishma? You want to say it's Mazikim?
What is Krishma Ba'arvit? We are kind of in a dilemma. And you see there was a debate whether you say Gaal Israel. Let's go with Agro on that, right? I think Maskirim Yetziat Mitzrayim Baleilot is not Vayomer. Okay? Maybe you don't say Vayomer because there is no tzitzis in Laila, whatever, but it's not Maskirim Yetziat Mitzrayim. It's Bracha Achona, right? It's Bracha Shlishit. And then you don't have the Amloch altogether there, and you understand what was the motivation of not having them. Then you ask yourself, so what's Krishma at night? It might be a kiyum of Talmud Torah. Vagita bo yomam v'layla. So, by the way, there is a theme that Kriyat Shema is not only Kabbalat Malchut Shamayim, but it's the minimum of Talmud Torah, right? That's we say, Rabbi Shmuel. Right? אפילו קרא שתי פרשות ביום. So that might be, and here אהבה רבה, right? By the way, we know in Halacha, and many poskim says, someone who says אהבה רבה, אהבת עולם, didn't make ברכת התורה, doesn't say, because it's ברכת התורה. So there is another, but then we will have, there is a slight asymmetry between Krishma in the morning,
extreme.
Krishma in the evening. You would say, well, Krishma in the evening is really not Kabbalat Malchut Shamayim. By the way, and there is a logic to it, because you are nichnas b'brit in the morning, not before you go to sleep. But we're going to have time to deal with Kriyat Shema on Avit. But from our conversation, it grew that by the way, one asymmetry between Tefillah and Kriyat Shema is that Tefillat Arvit is not clear. Tefillat Arvit Reshut, not Reshut. If it's Keneged Tmidin, there were two Tmidin. We're going to have to deal with all those questions. But I'm just saying that if you look very carefully, both Mitzad HaSvara and the organization of the Siddur, and you take seriously according to Agro, how you understand En Maskirim Yetziat Mitzrayim Valelot as referring to Birkat Gal Israel, not to Vayomer, and you see that, and then you see that in Bracha Rishona of Kriyat Shema, there's nothing of Amlachat HaMalachim. You understand that the structure is not to envelope an act of Kabbalat Malchut Shamayim by us, because we are not performing Kabbalat Malchut Shamayim at evening. Maybe it's Talmud Torah, V'agita bo yomam v'layla, maybe it's Mipnei HaMazikim, whatever, we're going to look at it. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm not going to open to floor to ask questions, but everyone wants to participate, so...
Please, Bakasha. Any questions?
Anyone has a question here?
I mean, you can do it b'simcha, b'yir'ah,
Shai, just between?
No, just a comment on Marav, that you see the Yoitzris were done on Shachris and Marav, right? In the same places before Krishna. The Patunim, when they added Yoitzris,
right,
and all of them are usually split between about the day, that's usually before Shabbos, and before Krishna they write about Mamlech Land Eibishter, and the Shachris Yoitzris. There's a lot of shalos. I mean, the Rambam has a chiv, the Rambam about adding to the Bruch of Amar. They were very against that. But I'm just saying, about Marav, they do have that. By Yotzis, they have, and the Yotzis before Krishna.
I want to understand. Sorry.
Right.
Historically,
Malachim are not saying Shir by night. Shachayni Kiula Shachar. Yaakov says that.
Exactly.
So that's why.
Exactly. Beron Yachad Kochvei Shachar. Exactly. This is why we have only Amlocha in the first bracha of Kriyat Shema in the Shachris, not in the evening.
Historically,
also saying about the cosmos Shemai, the cosmos are also saying Shira. It's not that
Sure.
So it's not that we just mentioned that they are cosmos. Also,
of course, and
we
are part of the cosmos as well.
Saying Shira through us.
We're part of the Malachim also.
The sun is shining.
Right.
This is the Shira. Shemaim Saf. I know the Yish Mekoyim. Cholor it's Tekavim. They're saying Shira.
Absolutely.
as a follow-up to the success, historically, at night nothing operated. The whole concept that people who think that things are happening at night, even up there, is a foreign concept. It's dark, everything is dead, nothing's going on.
Why do you know this word? They added even up there.
Because I see Mariv, even traditionally, he wasn't at night.
deal with the nightlife.
They were afraid. Mariv was, even when we did Mariv,
there is
it was
actually
before night.
a lot of interesting.
They were afraid.
Everything
At night it's dead.
Well, there is no avodah, there is no pulchan. The Mikdash was silent.
It's impossible because it's closed down. It's finished. What's last time?
Zafen lights?
I've had Zafen lights.
There was no avodah.
About the Maluchim. Do you see like a Chalishut Adat, a jealousy that the Maluchim's Hamlacha is much more structured, beautiful? And that's why we ask, Oy Chuda Shel Tzion too. We should also, Kanoam Siach Soy Tzar Vakoch, and then Musa Tim Lachotzion. They're doing it so beautiful together. And Mashank and me, I'm doing it to myself, Shema Yisrael. I can't do it as a...
It's interesting because it's a big theme in Midrash and other places to contrast.
That we better.
Yeah.
Right.
And how do you know we better? It's already in the Nosach HaTfilah. It's because of Ahava. Ahava is much better than Yirah ve'ema. And God doesn't show love to his Malachim. There's no relationship with them. They just echo the cosmos all. Right? But to us, he gave the Torah.
Even with chaotic.
And that's a big theme.
So you don't want to see like we're jealous of them, and that's that.
No.
Because you see it in Kedisha, in case that Musa Timlech B'Tzion, like you start with, they are doing it so beautiful, but I'm Ubiyeru Zeh
Chadash al Tzion Ta'ir is entering our quest for Geula. And in Sidur Rav Amram and other places, they don't mention that. I always say it, I say, okay, I mean...
Yeah, but
as
Kedisha
they say, now that I'm saying, I want to drop...
but you see it in Kedisha in case, it makes sense that it's the same tefillah than Musa Timlech B'Tzion, that we also want to have some kind of a beautiful avoid. Let's say the avoid in the Beis HaMikdash would be more like...
We want Geula. Here, in the here. So the here and now, the Kabbalat Torah, Be'ava, I think there is actually a very artistic, very well-crafted stating that what we are doing not what we are echoing as part, is of a far greater importance. Also, it stays in the middle of the it's at the center of what's happening. Right? And it's, I think the be'ava here is...
far greater than what?
Than the hero of the malachim.
Yeah.
And also from the atid?
What?
And also from the atid?
And also from the atid. Because who knows when the atid is coming, etc., etc. It's we're not dependent upon
living in the moment, current.
Yeah,
being here.
It's not ba malchut shamayim. I don't want to get into the sifrei minim.
Yeah.
Where malchut shamayim, if you look, by the way, the term malchut shamayim, we also have to explain what is the term malchut shamayim. What is shamayim? Shamayim is one of the kinuim of God, right? כמו מקום, כמו שכינה. Right? Malchut Shamayim is Malchut Hashem. So in the Christian tradition, if you read the Gospels, right, the kingdom of God is coming. Right? Ba Malchut Shamayim is declaring the coming, but we don't declare the coming. It's here and now through lekabel Malchut Shamayim. I think that the term lekabel Malchut Shamayim is a contrast here. It's not coming. It's not an expectation.
But it's interesting that
it's materialized through our Kabbalah.
But it's interesting that the way that they viewed Malchus Shamayim was always the way that they saw how in Rome how kingdom works, and the same stature, the same way they wanted to see in this Malchus Shamayim. Well, there's not where did they know how Malchus Shamayim works.
Okay,
it described exactly how in Rome Malchus Shamayim.
With analogy and contrast, right? There is also they build a lot on contrast.
There is a concept of ma v'yudoi b'tfila, b'krishma, ma v'yudoi. Where's the krishma, according to what we just described, without the yatsa v'nocham, without the minikol zois, without micha moichu, without the Malchus Shamayim, why is Krishma like considered like Kabul is all Malchus Shamayim? If you read the first part or the first two, if you have to be mamlech, you have to actually say v'yatzav nucha, maybe skip in the Shema.
Okay, so
you can say the vurim chofai bais, whatever it is. V'yatzav nucha v'gayush. That's Kabul.
So the question is, how do we understand, and that's a shift, a big shift in understanding the term echad, right? Which is, by the way, a very complicated history. But I think Chazal's understanding
174.
No. Just Chazal's understanding of echad is yachid, singular. It's not unified. It's not a quality of its being. What they call dachdut pshuta. It's exclusively.
Okay.
It's the only one, and that's where the Kabbalah
But that's
is.
Moshe Rabbeinu saying that Shema Yisrael. We're not
but
saying.
that's what we're saying. We're echoing.
We're saying there's only one, and therefore, in yesh din, yesh dayan, in yesh dayan, yesh din.
Anyone? One second.
You have.
How old is that? Meaning, if Baruch Shai would have been a oimer, and it means that originally it was said very long.
Yeah, it's that.
When did it change from the Lachat? What's the earliest? So it's a Yafik Shemoini, but is there...
I don't know actually to locate it, right? Because in Yom Kippur we say
Loud.
Right. I have to check it. My hunch is that. But this is a hunch, so why should I say hunches?
Let's see if you're right.
No, I don't know. I don't know the time. I don't know the time.
Huh? I just want to ask not only about this, it doesn't have to do especially with this sheet, but you mentioned it, that's why I'm asking. You do it a lot of times by the shiur. I think that sometimes you explain very nice some concept that we have in halacha with quoting by this and this professor 60 years ago. Yeah, let's say you mentioned today the act of speech, yeah?
Creating through speech.
Yeah, now, if I understand good that I never read this book, but if I understand, this is one of the very contemporary new way of looking on speech, meaning to say philosophers look at speech as really not something a hefzer for itself, like bringing out a tool, the machshavot from the person. This thing that the speech himself has a power is a beautiful thing, but it's a new contemporary. It's like 60, 70 years. Like 60, 70 years. Now they're getting even developed now. These kind of talks, and also especially today after the Second World War II, you had this thing of how therapy, how you're giving out. There's a lot of this thing is getting now developed. Right. So I'm asking, a lot of times you do that. You explain concept. We see Chazal, and it means this and this kind of very nice thought, but it's really this kind of thoughts are really thoughts that no one spoke about it 200-300 years ago. And maybe it's like a little bit drush, but I'm asking if it's...
Then there was the word, there's a very Christian thing about saying the word also, no?
Yeah. A lot of times I look at it that when someone explains some concept in Gemara, but a concept that let's say things that they only developed 150 years ago, and look at it, you're not going to explain the Gemara with this,
Of course.
Same thing, you're not going to explain the liturgic from the...
Of course. So what Austin did, but that has to do with development of philosophy of language and other things. What Austin did, he's actually describing linguistic practices.
Right.
Noam Chomsky falls into the discussion.
He's describing linguistic practices that they are as old as the world, right? As those, they are as old.
So isn't true what I said that the philosophy, they view language and dibur more that bringing out what the mashava, and not something like the dibur online himself is doing something.
So what he did is not he didn't mechadesh that language can perform things, has a performative capacity.
No, he wasn't there.
No, because at the moment you say Areat Mekudeshet,
because Areat Mekudeshet is explaining what you're doing. Doesn't have to be the Amira Poil. That's already
Amira Poil, it's not magical.
No, I'm not saying it's magical. I'm just saying you could understand it's just the Gili Das. That's just like, a secret voice in you. You don't need an Amira. So it doesn't show us anything that the Dibur made something. And even by therein, you can explain. You need the Machshava should be on a level that you tell us what you think. It's not enough that you say, Big Sifasayim.
By the way,
I'm not trying to argue.
You pointed to something very interesting because you're pointing to something very interesting because the question when you say dvarim shebalev enam dvarim when you refer to speech acts, right? You say, well, what do you mean exactly when you say dvarim shebalev enam dvarim? You can interpret it in two very different interpretations. One is, since we don't have an access to your heart, it cannot be proven. Then don't come to me and says, well, I did it so I can, on the assumption that we'll go to Eretz Yisrael. Right? I sold this house because I was wanting to move to Eretz Yisrael. Now that I didn't move to Eretz Yisrael, the sale is over. Or you can say something deeper, that it's not about our uncertainty on having a sense of what happened in your mind, but it has no validity as a performance, right? The passing thoughts have no performative quality.
Otherwise, you can't have a functioning world.
That was the first word. I think that Jonathan is asking a question in general. Every time there was a new philosophy that seemed anachronistic towards the ancient. He said these new philosophies. His general question he's asking about all the time. Whenever you speak about a modern philosophy, how could they weren't aware of these views? And that's a very big question. And I think he wasn't speaking specifically about this.
I was speaking specifically about this also. But answer my question. I think a lot of times it's wrong to explain things with
sometimes it is. It's true. Okay, but the main thing is, I just want to say, the main thing is that we have I hope that after this shiur, we have a better grasp of Krishma and Kriyat Shema Birchoteh.
It's time to read Krishma.
If we this is Dayenu, right?
Right. It's time to read Krishma. It's time to read Krishma, next week we start with Davening.
That's about the